You've heard me speak about bingeable branding, storytelling marketing, and if you're curious about what it's truly like to work with myself, whether that's in a private capacity or throughout my signature group program, Bingeable Branding Mastermind, this is your personal invitation to explore which level of support is perfectly suited for where you are at and where you are going. If any of my episodes have landed for you deeply, just know this is exactly the work we do at a much deeper scale across my coaching and programs. If you're looking for a sign to start, let this be it for you. It's time to start somewhere together. Welcome to Start Somewhere, the bingeable podcast for the ambitious, self-development obsessed who know they are meant for more. More money, more freedom, more fun. Each week, I expose the sexy truths about manifestation, feminine mindset, and rituals to keep your body and lifestyle thriving. I'll show you how to move through change like it's your runway moment. Welcome to our grounded space to becoming self-obsessed and seducing your own life, where we start with the first step, not the entire staircase. Let's start somewhere together. Do you want to hear something quite unusual? So a couple of weeks ago, I shared this on the podcast as well. I've set a huge financial goal in my business, along with many other goals in my personal life. And not even 12 hours later, I had some pretty drastic endings happen in my life. Now, the thing is, I wasn't surprised at all because so much so when we're talking about manifesting and goal setting, and let's just get this clear, they're essentially the same thing. Whilst we are setting these new intentions, these new standards, setting these new boundaries for ourselves, things in our life are actually going to be pulled away. It's all about making the space for what you want to come in. And I love to speak on this a lot in my episodes, particularly when we are speaking about manifesting, which for some reason we're just going there straight away. In order to actually call in these beautiful manifestations you want, this can be a monetary goal, this can be a relationship, this can be a friendship, this can be a move into state, this can be name, insert anything you want. There is most likely always going to be something in your life that is taken away, that is replaced, that is substituted with something else. And this is what I love to call the unsexy truth of manifesting. And I'm all for living a very seductive, flirty, sexy life. And the thing is, when it actually comes to manifesting and calling in our goals and our desires, there's always going to be an element of something being quote unquote taken away. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Start Somewhere, the podcast. And I love how we just went straight there with that episode. I just got back from Bali about 4 hours ago. I had an overnight flight from Bali all the way to the Gold Coast because I had a really beautiful experience be presented itself in my life, and it was really beautiful. This experience came about purely as a result of my personal brand, and I was essentially facilitating / speaking at a retreat in Bali. And the retreat was all on feminine embodiment. And it's honestly one of my favorite topics. I love to speak all on feminine energy in a lot of our episodes on the show. If that does interest you, have a scroll through, type in feminine qualities, you'll find a bunch of episodes. And I love to live my life so much like this. We also have an episode coming up all on like dark feminine energy because I've really been stepping into this more so. However, what I was doing at this retreat was incredibly expansive, and not only was I able to experience the beautiful transformations that so much of what this retreat was all about, which is stepping more into her and stepping more into this next level and version of self, I also got invited to speak on personal branding and marketing for the other participants at the retreat. And this was such a last minute opportunity that came into my world. And to give some context, I landed from Adelaide a few days right before I left to go to Bali. So it was very go, as a lot of my life is. So there was no surprise there. And it was more so like when the opportunity is quote unquote ready for you, it will be presented to you regardless whether you think you actually have the space or not. And something I've been reminding myself a lot on recently is that if you are in a somewhat challenging season of your life, maybe you're feeling a bit of a pullback in business, a bit of a pullback maybe in connections, in friendships, in love, in dating, insert whatever that actually is for you, just know the universe is always giving you exactly what you can actually handle, what you can actually manage. And so the past few months have been quite, I want to say, testing for me. And I haven't actually spoken about this much anywhere on my socials or podcast before, and the podcast always gets to hear this stuff first. And I feel I've truly come out of it now as of like 48 hours ago. Like it was very raw and vulnerable for me, even when I was recording my last few episodes. So just let that land for you as well. And actually, I lie. I did speak of this on my stories a few weeks ago, saying that it's so easy to look at other people's lives online and think they have it all together. They're presenting and polishing and putting up this like quote unquote perfect lifestyle. You truly don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I just want this to be your permission slip and your reminder that not everybody has their shit together, even if it looks like it online. For some reason, I had to say that for whatever reason. And so I landed from Bali a few hours ago, absolutely feeling so like my cup is so full, not only for the beautiful experience I got to go through, also just being in Bali, traveling, being with one of my beautiful friends, and of course, being invited to speak and my expertise. And as I said just a few moments ago, this was purely a result of my personal brand. It's how I've showed up online and also offline. And so let this be your reminder and also your permission slip. Where can you start to show even more of your hidden traits and qualities and quirks that perhaps you don't actually share enough of online, because there is actually somebody out there who's looking for you. And for me, it landed me on this retreat in Bali, very last minute. So a lot has shifted in my life. I feel like I need to do a whole life update episode. So I might just wiggle some of that throughout this episode. Essentially, I've been offered a really expansive, exciting new opportunity, which will work alongside my business. And this is me stepping into a content creator role for a company here on the Gold Coast that, funnily enough, is actually what first magnetized me to the Gold Coast before I lived here. They are the company that run my NLP training that I've attended, and I feel like I speak about a lot as well. And like for some backstory, this company hired me over a year ago now when I was still living in Adelaide to do some work for them. And now fast forward over 12 months later, we've come full circle. I'm in that position again in a whole new way. And it just feels so expansive, so right, I'm going to say. And I just know the growth that's coming is going to be enormous. I was saying this to my friend the other day when she was actually driving me to the airport to go to Bali. And I turned to her and said, I'm just ready to blow stuff up. And I mean that in the way of just expansion, abundance, all these like really beautiful high chunk words coming into my world. Everything's really about to shift. I feel it. And so the reason I'm sharing all of this, and the reason why you should continue listening to this episode, is because I want to shine the light on this particular topic, this particular identity shift that I've been keeping in the back of my mind throughout this entire past 3-4 months, which is that the version of you who got you to where you are right now, she's not getting you to where you want to go in the future. And I feel when we think of this term on paper, it makes a bit of sense, right? However, what actually comes like the deeper layers behind the scenes of, I'm going to speak on like shedding this identity, shedding this version of self that's going to get you to where you want to go. I always like use a visualization to explain this as like you're in a waiting room and you've let go of that old version of self. It's like you're sitting in this waiting room, flicking through these like boring magazines, waiting to go into your next level. And so how can we make this actually more interesting? Like, first of all, get rid of those boring magazines. How can you start to fuel and feed your mind with things that are going to give you such bursts of inspiration? And things that have really helped me is stepping more into my inner child, stepping more into play. For example, I spent quite a few weeks playing a lot of beach volleyball when it was like really warm here on the Gold Coast as well. I went to Movie World on the weekend. I played Top Golf, which is this really fun giant golf thing here on the Gold Coast. Just how can we step more into play in our life? And this is something I feel that is so, in my reality anyway, previously was so like overlooked or almost looked at like, oh, I don't have the time or space for that because I'm so focused on like working and grinding and hustling. And instead, that's actually what gives me more energy. That's actually what creates more space. That's how inspiration comes. And so much so, it's like building your business, building yourself often comes from communication. It comes from connection. It comes from networking. It comes from inserting yourself in particular rooms and spaces. opposed to always just thinking you have to sit like behind your laptop in your room, like 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., just like typing away. Like that's actually not how these incredible connections come about in your world. So how can you like insert yourself more into rooms and containers and situations and connections and conversations with people that are going to rapidly expand you and rapidly stretch you? Because your past self got you here. Give her love, give her a big kiss on the cheek, and let her go. Your next level is going to require some upgrades. So I have a few points I want to really just elaborate more on, and also to get your minds thinking in this way as well. So the first one is, what behavior would the next level version of you stop tolerating? Okay. And for example, we can look at things as your boundaries, as your environments, things like your time, your standards, also things like who you surround yourself by, all like such simple things to digest that actually make a world of a difference. Are you the friend in the friendship where you can actually hold that person to a higher standard? Or even better, do you have friends that do that for you? And this can be in like the simplest of ways. And I know all of the female friendships I have in my world, we all do that to each other. And it's so beautiful that if one person perhaps isn't feeling that drive or that push or that motivation, the other friend can come in and actually raise the standard and bring that person with them. And like those are the only types of friendships I actually have the time and space for in my world. And I have been very, I want to say like harsh and like razor sharp with really allowing like who's in my space, who gets my time, who I'm even conversing with, sending messages to, having phone conversations with, and of course hanging out with in real life. And I have been working on this a lot behind the scenes for months and months. And I got quite a few tests from the universe where people from my past, old flames, old friends, old foes had come back around and wanted to see me, hang out, talk with me. And it's interesting because the old, very much big people pleaser version of me would give my time, my energy, so much of myself to these connections that weren't actually on the same level of my standards and boundaries that I knew I wanted to step into. And it was this real interesting, like, think of like a seesaw. It was like this very like unbalanced kind of energy exchange that, of course, this was all my experience and this is what was happening in my model of the world. And it felt quite uncomfortable for me to stand up for myself and for me to set the boundary and the standard, because the old version of me who got me here, that felt like I was letting somebody down. It felt like I had to put other people's needs before mine. And it was quite like a pointy pill to swallow, because I had to quite literally put myself first. And that isn't always the easiest. Just as like getting into alignment isn't always a walk in the park as well. Like, as I mentioned before, when we are setting these incredible goals and milestones that we want to achieve, there's always going to be an element of things being like, when I say taken away, it always ends up being replaced with something even bigger and better. And so I was talking to one of my friends a while ago and I was telling her about this particular ending I had with this person. And because she thinks very much similar to myself with these whole concepts, her response was, "I'm so excited to see who's next for you." And I'm like, that is it. Like, that, first of all, is the standard, the energy, the response, and also the mind shift for me. So let this be your permission slip to, first of all, dream way bigger. Like, whatever your goal is, double that. However much money you want to make, double that. Know that you can actually shoot for the stars and go so much further and beyond. And then secondly, be so open and so okay with the universe rearranging things for you behind the scenes. Interrupting this episode with a special announcement. You've heard me speak about bingeable branding, and I thought it deserved its designated exclusive coaching program. Bingeable Branding Mastermind is designed for ambitious creatives and entrepreneurs who want to expand to multi-5-figure months through growing and defining their online personal brand. Differing from my private coaching, you receive a community of other like-minded people also in business, as well as direct support from myself with weekly live group coaching calls, an electric WhatsApp chat for live instant feedback from me to hear my riffs and ask your questions on content, storytelling, and how we can convert your content to clients. Receive direct access to a library of branding and storytelling frameworks I implement exclusively with my 6- and 7-figure clients. The founding rate to join Bingeable Branding is currently live, by application only. The application form is in the show notes, as well as the link to the website where you can browse even more about this program. If this sounds like the place you know you need to secure a seat in, I look forward to welcoming you into this space. Back to the episode. So, one of One of my favorite quotes that is just like so much of my life right now, it's by Steve Jobs, and it's along the lines of, you can't actually connect the dots until you've reached pretty much the end of that whole sector. And so I use like a visual to explain this. It's like I was hopping from dot to dot, going in this weird like zigzag formation, being like, this makes no sense, this makes no sense, what is happening, universe, what is going on right now? That's honestly what it's been feeling like the past few months for me. Granted, I have incredible support around me, both business, with my friends, my family, and myself, of course. It was just a very interesting space for me to navigate recently. And now that I'm like, as I say, at the end of this season, we'll call it, I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, that's why that person broke up with me. That's why that client left. That's why that little financial setback happened. That's why that job opportunity didn't go through. That's why that experience had to happen. That's why I had to pull myself away from that. That's why that experience no longer persisted. It's all making sense. And let this be yet again your permission slip. When you're in those moments I just shared, in your model of the world, whatever that means for you, if it doesn't make sense right now, it's not the end. However, this is the part where I see kind of is what separates people from good to great, right? How can you continue to push forward opposed to just accepting your current situation? So we'll use an example. If you are somebody who is really curious about, you're wanting to invest in yourself, you're wanting to perhaps sign up to bingeable branding, to working with myself, to buying a short online course, to buying a self-development book, to investing in something else business related. And right now, perhaps it doesn't make sense financially. It doesn't make sense with your time, with your capacity, the kids, you've just moved house, there's so much on your plate, insert anything else. Do you see how you are actually basing a decision on your future from where you are right now, opposed to being somebody who is great and can actually base a decision on where they know investing in insert this is going to get them? And this is easier said than done, because I very much know the wobble, the stretch of like, oh no, I'm just not ready, or oh no, when insert this happens, or when this slows down, when the kids go back to school, when I have more money, when I stop doing insert anything else. You're actually basing decisions on your current reality. Therefore, that current reality is going to continue to be instilled in your world. The universe and the subconscious mind, right? Pretty much the same thing, if we really want to go there, doesn't actually know the difference between what is true versus what is made up in your mind. That's why visualization is so powerful, because if you can sit there and visualize yourself opening your laptop, staring at your screen, seeing, multi-five figures in your Xero account, seeing DMs flooded of aligned dream clients wanting to work with you, seeing your Stripe repayments dinging on your phone, if you can actually visualize that, and repetition is the mother of all skills, if you can continue on this flow, your brain, the universe, your subconscious doesn't actually know the difference, whether that is true or whether that is made up in your sweet mind. And so use this, run with this. How instead can you make those moves that feel that little bit stretchy, that feel a little bit just out of arm's reach? That is how you are going to create phenomenal success. And let phenomenal success mean whatever that means to you. Another shift that's really helped me throughout this whole season is getting really clear on what patterns have I been unconsciously repeating because they feel familiar. Not because they're actually serving me. And I see this a lot when it comes to this whole like identity reprogramming, stepping out of this like one life, sitting in this waiting room, ready to go on your next life analogy. And let me just say as well, feeling ready and waiting is always just a decision to move forward. And so this was very apparent for me recently, because when I was in this, metaphorically waiting room, and I was getting really clear, like, okay, what boundaries and standards and what like familiar patterns have I been so used to living? Like they've been so auto-programmed in my mind that I'm ready to completely release them. Like that was quite confronting, because yet again, it's like, what the version of Isabelle who got me here, she cannot come with me anymore. And that is like grieving this version of self that isn't always sweet, isn't always just like, okay, she's gone. It's a little bit ugly. It's a little bit messy. It involves such a big shed. And when you're constantly moving and growing and expanding, which I know so many of you love expansion, it's so much of what you are looking for in your life and business. Like, I wish I knew this years ago, that this whole like identity grieving process, like I wish I could make sense of that back in the day, because I feel it would just make the process just so much more seamless. Instead of navigating it, I'm like, what on earth is actually going on right now? And of course, as I mentioned, I know I'm so supported with all like the professional, the business, the friends, the family support around me. I was able to actually like articulate and pinpoint what was going on here. And so grieving those habits, those familiar patterns, it's going to feel like sticky because you're so used to that being your default, right? If you're so used to somebody who's been living in this scarcity mindset, to having next to no money in the bank, to finding it really hard to sign clients, to create money, to create this financial success, and you're like, okay, delete, that no longer serves me. Your brain, your unconscious mind is actually going to default to that without you even realizing, because that's what it's used to. And so this whole identity work shifting, it's actually starting to write your new story and having fun with that. And as I said before, like whatever dream or vision you have, can you double that? Can you make that even more expansive? Can you shoot further than the stars, further than the moon? It's limitless what's actually possible for you. And this is where our mind is our best and also our worst enemy, because your brain and mind will tell you every excuse under the sun as to why you can't have that thing, as to why it's too soon, as to why that's too much on your plate, too much capacity, I just don't have the space. Do you see how your brain, it wants to keep you in this certain world? And don't get me wrong, it's not out of any malicious intent. It's because the brain doesn't know the difference between, it thinks something new is also something really scary because it's unfamiliar territory. And the brain's job is to keep you safe. It's to keep your heart pumping. It's to keep you breathing without you having to actually tell your vessel to do that. And so when we can bring that awareness to the front, show it love, and be like, I'm actually ready for something new. I'm available for something new and something different. And this looks like reevaluating your boundaries, your standards, your behaviors, your time, who gets your energy, who gets your time, and so on. So it's been an interesting 3-4 months now that I really am out of that, and I can see hindsight. And hindsight has always been something really powerful and something I always really look at with a strong regard. I remember I have this story when I went through my whole engagement ending years ago now, and I was talking to my boss at the time, and we had some really beautiful chats about the whole experience and just me navigating what was going on. And I remember we were sitting in this restaurant talking about just my emotions and where my head was at, and just, it was a lot to go through. And he was this really strong pillar to be that support for me throughout the whole situation. And very wise, and shared this beautiful analogy for me, which went along the lines of, if you have a coin in front of you right now, say, imagine we're sitting opposite one another, and I'm staring at one side and you're staring at the other side. I can only see my side and you can only see your side. However, hindsight is this beautiful piece where we're able to go so much higher and think of this like bird's eye view shot, higher and higher and higher. So much so we can actually peep over both sides of the coin. And this is what hindsight is. We're able to come out of the situation. We're able to essentially zoom out, see the situation, see the experience from a different perspective, and essentially be able to look back and forward, front and back, and really make sense of why certain things got to happen, right? Instead of they had to happen, it got to happen. You get to experience that. And this is essentially how we get to become wiser with our decisions and gather more of this life experience. And it's all well and good to cross your T's, dot your I's, do what's right by the books, by society. However, life experience, life wisdom, you can only read so much about it in a book or listen to so much about it on a podcast. It's always people's perspectives that are shaping, that are sharing their experiences. And it's not until you have fully embodied a specific experience and then reflected and then seen hindsight for it, that it's like you're leveling up. It's like you're collecting more gold coins in this game and you're able to put more in your bag. And those life experiences, they stay with you for life. Like they're in your heart. And that's what's going to get you so far in this world. And I feel that I'm getting really emotional, which I'm just going to roll with that as well. I had my family staying up with me over the weekend just gone. And it's interesting. I've always known I'm, the black sheep of the family, I guess we'll call it that. And I'll take that. I'll wear that with pride. And it's always been quite interesting for me to be in those familiar family settings where I do feel myself being quite different from my siblings in regards to life status and life experience. And I know I have such a different background and experience compared to them. And it's, I guess, family really magnetize and it really amplifies certain things for you. And so I feel the past 6 months, the growth in my world has yet again been astronomical. And then for really familiar people and just familiarity to come back in my world, e.g. being around my family in that proximity, it's like it kind of really amplifies like, whoa, I really am so different to how I used to be 6 months ago. And it's so easy to feel behind in life when we compare. And we all know comparison is a thief of joy. And if you don't, there's a beautiful reminder for you. I even forget that sometimes. And it's like we compare our page 20 to somebody's book 30 or our page 15 to somebody's page 40. You don't always know what goes on behind the scenes. You don't always know the challenges, the hurdles, the wins, the successes that have actually gone on behind the scenes. So how can you stop and take a breath and truly slow down and remember who you are and feel seen and feel heard in so much so of what you do? And with the retreat I was on, that was a really big theme of the retreat for the women attending. And interestingly enough, and also no coincidence, right? That was a big theme that I was also stepping into from being in that retreat space, helping facilitate. And for so long, and I know people listening to this will also resonate, for so long, I didn't see that side of myself for whatever self-worth, wound, insert, anything else that comes up. And for that to really drop in and to be felt in my body, I want you to recognize how phenomenal you really are in all that you do, and your hard work never goes unnoticed. And one of my favorite quotes is, success is always paid in full up front. There's no afterpay. There's no, you get a bit here, you get a bit there. It's like gritty, going towards what you want. And it's always a test of your grit, a test of your resilience. And so next time you're in any sticky, uncomfortable, wobbly situation, opposed to focusing on how quote unquote shit it is, I want you to focus on, what is this teaching you? How are you growing from it? What are you gaining from this experience? What resilience? What's the word I'm looking for? What character building is it giving you? Because that is the gold. That is the juice that people are so desperately looking for in these self-help books. It's embodied. When you are going through that hurdle in life, which we do, it's ebbs and flows, right? Up and down, up and down. The next time you're in that situation, or if you're in one right now, how is this teaching you? How is this happening for you? What does this actually mean for you? Because when you can figure that out, that's how you then get to quantum leap. And I know I am honestly a pro quantum leaper. It's and if you don't know what that means, it's essentially like jumping timelines. It's getting this astronomical success, and just, you look at somebody online and they're like, oh, they're an overnight success. It's always what goes on behind the scenes. How can you celebrate yourself more? How can you allow yourself to be seen from yourself. That was the missing piece for me for so long. And that's what really landed for me, particularly while I was at Bali. And the way that like realization, that awareness, that like surge of energy has just been like the fire under my rocket is something I could not have found in a book, listening to a podcast. Don't get me wrong, those things spark this inspiration. I'm always plugging into something that's going to help enrich my mind. However, it's that embodiment experience. It's walking the talk. And like, let's use this into branding now. I say this time and time again. I'm such a walking embodiment of start somewhere, because I'm always figuring out what's the next step to take. How can I take that step, regardless whether I know how the hell I'm going to get up that staircase? What is the first step to take? And sometimes it does look like plugging into an episode like this, listening to an audible, reading a book, having a conversation with a friend, talking to your coach, investing in some kind of mentorship or program that's going to help you. If it doesn't make sense, that's the decision you get to take. I'm going to leave you with this question here. Where in your life are you still acting like the version of you you've already outgrown? If you receive value from this episode, it's time to apply what you've heard. And if you're ready to take this further and work together at a deeper level, all the links to join my signature programs are in the show notes. Explore my website to learn more. Otherwise, I'd love to see you listening. So take a screenshot and share this episode to your Instagram stories and tag me at isabelle.startsomewhere and at startsomewhere.podcast. Let's start somewhere together.